Hi everyone, thanks for clicking on the video. Beautiful morning outside. It's about +1 right now. Inside the terrace here it's about +18. Big difference. Obviously that's because the sun is out, but I'll try to keep the intro quick here. But that being said, there's a lot of updates since my last video. This week's episode is going to be mainly about a new piece of equipment that I bought, which is a inverter generator. More on that to come. I will give you a quick update on the weather, or more importantly, the change in the weather. Things have warmed up. It's definitely not spring-like, but compared to where we were a week or two ago, it's definitely warmed up. And also, despite what you see behind me, all of the snow, etc., we have started our pepper plants for the year. So may seem a little early to be talking about gardening, but it's that time of year. My wife was nice enough to start the pepper plants from seed. Tomatoes will come in the very near future. If you can't tell, my voice is a little gruff. I've got a little bit of a chest cold. I've managed to avoid all the sickness going around all winter, but it finally caught up to me. And also, for those of you that watch my previous videos, usually I take you on a walk out in the forest, but just due to the weather conditions, all of the roads heading out to the forest are either glare ice or about a foot of slushy snow, depending on which road it is and what time of day. And I've already slipped and fell on the ice once about 5 days ago. I'm feeling okay, but I've got a sore knee. I don't want to risk falling again at my age, but thanks again for clicking on the video. More to come. Hi everyone. I have recently added a new piece of equipment to my arsenal, and it is this. It is a portable inverter generator. I'll go ahead and unbox it to make sure that everything's there and nothing's broken. It's taken quite a journey to get to me here in Lithuania, but I'll go ahead and unbox it, and I'll come back and explain to you why I got a generator and why I selected this particular model. Well, everything seems to be there. Everything seems to be in one piece. There is some prep that I need to do before I fire it up. It doesn't come with oil in it, so I'll need to read the manual to determine what kind of oil to put in it and other one-time setup procedures that I need to go through, but it looks good. So starting off, why did I get one? And basically it's just for backup power during not necessarily emergencies, but just power outages. I'm not one of these doomsday preppers that's going to go live in a bunker. I'm not expecting the apocalypse to come. This is just for those occasions where the electricity happens to go out. It doesn't happen too often here in Lithuania. In fact, I'd happen to say we lose electricity here less often than when I was living in Wisconsin in the USA. But it does go out, sometimes for brief periods of time, sometimes for several hours. Usually it's maintenance. But the other thing is that, I'm sure you guys have noticed in the last few years that, the extreme weather and the frequency of extreme weather seems to be increasing in the last few years. Mainly here in Lithuania, it's wind, and wind is, it knocks out a lot of electricity here. We've been pretty lucky where I'm at, but anyhow, it's just a backup power source. I don't plan to use it to power the whole house, nor do I think it has enough power to power the whole house. But if, for example, the electricity goes out in the summertime, my primary concern is the refrigerator and the freezer, and this will certainly power that for as long as I need it to. The flip side of that is in the winter, if the electricity goes out, the primary concern is the heating or boiler system, and this should power that as well. I'll have to get an electrician in here to get a bypass to run it from this, but it will serve the needs when there is a power outage or a weather emergency, again, it's not going to be the primary source of electricity around here. It's just purely for backup. And I guess on to why I chose this particular model. I'll try to keep it short, but I also want to give you all the information. First off, I have never had a generator before. I am completely new to this, so by no means am I an expert, but I have done hours and hours and hours of research on this over the last several years. This isn't just a new idea. I've been thinking about this for a number of years, so I have done a ton of research, not just YouTube videos, but stories and reviews out there on the internet, etc., talking to people. And there's a lot of opinions out there. And by the way, this is an inverter generator versus the ones that aren't inverter. And for those of you that don't know, the inverter actually converts or produces AC power, then converts it to DC, and then reconverts it back to AC power, which the inverter makes that power a lot more consistent, or what they call clean power. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute or two. But again, back to the research. A lot of the research I did was, a lot of these people that live off grid, especially in Alaska, who rely on these things. They don't, hence the term off grid. They're not on the electric grid. But also just general homeowners that keep these for the exact same reason that I have it, is for power backup. And, obviously this is not the most powerful one you can get. It produces 2,200 watts, 2,200 watts, which, again, it's not going to power your whole house, but it'll run, your refrigerator. You can charge, mobile devices, etc. So I could have gotten a more powerful one, but I don't really need it. As far as some of the output ports, I've got two here for the 230 volts or 220, which of course I'm in Europe, so 110 doesn't do me any good, or 120. There's a 12 volt output. There's a few other smaller ones, but I don't have a lot of output ports. For my purposes, that's fine. You can get some other models that have a little bit more output options or ports. Back to the brand, as I mentioned, this is a Honda. The reason I went with Honda is because of its reputation for reliability. It wasn't a cheap piece of gear. In fact, you can get comparable models for the 2,200 watt output, etc., for about half of what I paid for this. I don't need to go into what I paid for this. You guys can go online and see the prices. Bearing in mind the price here in Europe in euros is a lot more than you would pay for this same unit in the US in dollars. But again, I went with Honda just based on the reputation and everything that I've seen in the reviews. Again, the hours of exhaustive research I did. Honda's well known for reliability, whether it's motorcycles, snow blowers, cars, etc. That's a well-known fact. There are some other good models out there. I mean, there's Yamaha, there's Kohler, some really good brand name ones that are going to cost you some money. And then of course there are some lesser known names, or they call them no name, or kind of off brand. You can get it, for example, Harbor Freight or some of these other outlets. And I'm not knocking those. A lot of people swear, oh, you don't need to spend all this money on a Honda. But again, in all this research that I've seen, and I've watched so many videos, especially these off-gridders in Alaska, where they rely heavily on these, they'll go out and they'll get a bigger one, more powerful, or a different name, a Yamaha, a Kohler, and inevitably it will break. Something will go wrong with the control board. And they always go back to this Honda. It always gets them through. It's kind of the backup to their backup. But it's not perfect. There's a lot of complaints about Honda, especially in cold weather. It's kind of finicky. If you leave the unit outside and it's not warm, the oil is so thick that the sensor thinks that the motor's not getting oil, so it won't run or start. So you kind of got to keep it somewhere warm or bring it in somewhere warm before you're going to use it. There's also some complaints about the carburetor in cold weather, and I guess you can get a cold weather kit to add onto this, which I will probably do. But again, back to the features and specs, you know, there's definitely far more powerful ones than I have here. In fact, I almost bought, instead of this one, there was a 4,000 watt inverter generator made in Germany by a really good company with obviously nearly twice the power, a lot more features. It had electric start. You could run that one on propane or gasoline. This one will only run on gasoline. So I almost bought that one, but I didn't want to get distracted with all these features. I just want something that's going to work. And, you know, again, based on the research, this was going to be my best bet. You know, maybe I've made a mistake. Again, there's a lot of opinions out there. Back to the whole inverter technology, I won't go on and on about that, but the reason that this is important, you know, you can get generators at far less the cost that aren't or don't have the inverter. It's just straight to AC, and that works just fine for certain power tools, or if you're going to want to, you know, run a water pump or something like that. But, you know, modern day appliances like refrigerators and things, and more importantly for me, I do plan on buying a portable battery pack, and those types of units require what's called clean power. It cannot fluctuate. And these generators that don't have the inverter produce what's called dirty power. It fluctuates, and things like refrigerators, modern appliances, these backup or these portable power banks do not like dirty power. They like clean power, and the inverter makes that power clean. It's very consistent. I think they call it Psywave technology. But, you know, I know I'm going a little long, but this is important to me. It may mean something to folks such as yourselves, especially if you're considering getting some kind of a backup. Again, I'll keep you posted. It's one of those things where it's like an insurance policy. You hope to never use it, but that being said, you can't leave them sit around. You got to run them, or else they'll kind of get gummed up. But you know, I'm sure it'll come in useful for other purposes. You know, if I'm at a particular place or somewhere where there is no electricity and I want to run some power tools or something like that, I'm sure it'll come in handy. Also forgot to mention the other reasons I went with Honda is it's pretty light. It's 22 kilograms, which I think is about, I don't give or take 46 pounds, which is, you know, not the lightest thing, but it is light compared to some of the other models. It's quiet. It is the quietest generator in this size range of all of them, which, you know, is important to me. You don't want to have it too loud if you don't need to. I will build a box to go over it when it's sitting outside running, just to keep it out of the weather and to try to fight these issues with cold temperatures that these units seem to have. There is a little exhaust or muffler here. I'll get an extender on that so it can extend outside the box. And we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and try to get some oil in it, get some fuel in it. I'll read the instruction manual and see what we end up with. But thanks for going on the journey with me. Admittedly, it did not start on the first couple pulls. I didn't get that on film, but I think it's because it's just new. There was no fuel in the lines, etc. Starting just fine now. Now for the big test, I'll plug in this grinder, which does use quite a few volts, or watts, I should say. Pretty quiet though. Hi everyone, Saturday, February 21st. It's about -6 right now, early morning, which is one of the warmest mornings we've had in a long time. You can see I'm managing to keep my road cleared. Snow has definitely piled up over the last month and a half or so. None of this has actually melted. And the reason it hasn't melted is we have not been above 0 in Celsius for 56 straight days. That is 8 weeks. That being said, they do have some temperatures above freezing forecasted for tomorrow, and not much above, maybe +1, +2. But point being is this may be the most snow we see for a while. It should start to possibly melt. We're definitely not done with winter, but the amount on the ground and in the trees, etc., should start to go down. That also being said, you know, hopefully it doesn't melt too quickly. That's all going to depend on, obviously, the temperatures, but also if we get some rain. But you can see this whole basin. There's a little river that runs through there. But if it melts too quickly and or we get a bunch of rain with the warm temperatures, they're concerned about flooding here in Lithuania. I think I'm pretty safe here. There's my house. This basin does and probably will fill completely with water as part of the spring melt. Rarely does it get higher than, you know, the edge of the basin. But before we lived here, our neighbors said that there was one year where the water got all the way up into the yard here, which of course in those days it wasn't yard, it was just kind of wild. But we will see what happens. Little bit sad to see the cold and the snow coming to an end. Again, that doesn't mean we're done with winter, but the winter as we've known it for the past 8 weeks appears to be coming to an end. And somewhere underneath all of this, as you can see, some of these piles are darn near up to my chin, but somewhere under all this we do have some flower beds. Somewhere under all this there is a string of Christmas lights and one of my best electric cords. Somewhere under all that is a garden and a greenhouse. But also somewhere under all this, believe it or not, are new molehills. I'm quite certain the moles are still active, so when this snow melts I will have a lot of molehills to clean up. So looking outside, you might think it's a little early to start thinking about gardening, but it isn't. It's that time of year. People generally start peppers from seed in the house anywhere between the middle of February and early March. Tomatoes will come a little bit later, but my wife has prepared the seeds. You can see there's quite a few seeds in there. Most of them are not store-bought. They're just seeds that she saved from the pepper plants last year, and she's replanting them. They look pretty thick in there, and that's by design. Not all of them will grow. Most of them should. And then once they all grow and they're kind of small, then she goes out and thins them out and moves them into individual planters. More to come.